The grave that knocked back. I was 16 the first time I heard the knocking. It wasn't thunder, though a storm had rolled through the town of Ember Hollow just hours before. It wasn't wind, though the trees along the cemetery's edge had been stripped, nearly bare leaves littering the damp ground like confetti from a funeral. No, this was different, deliberate. 3 knocks, pause, 2 more, then silence. I pressed my ear closer to the cold stone of the gravestone. I shouldn't have been there. It was past midnight, and even in a sleepy town like ours, wandering around the cemetery wasn't just frowned upon, it was asking for trouble. But I had to be sure. Earlier that evening, Mr. Flanders, the old groundskeeper, burst into the diner where I worked part-time. He was pale as the mashed potatoes we served, hands trembling as he waved off his usual coffee. I overheard him muttering to the sheriff, "Something's not right with Plot 39. That grave it knocked back." Everyone laughed, everyone but me. Plot 39 belonged to Eleanor Grayson, buried in 1953. She'd been the town's piano teacher, sweet, soft-spoken, and blind. I remembered the stories, how she'd wandered out during a blizzard and froze near the river, how her fingers, even in death, were curled like she was still playing. They buried her with her piano scarf wrapped around her throat like a gentle goodbye, but none of that mattered now. What mattered was the sound, those precise rhythmic knocks. I pressed my palm flat against the stone, half expecting another tremor. The air was damp, soaked in fog. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. Then came the sound again, louder this time. 3 knocks. Pause, 2 more, like Morse code. My heart climbed into my throat. I should have run. I should have left and never returned. But I couldn't. Something about it felt familiar. "Eleanor," I whispered, feeling ridiculous. My breath fogged against the headstone. No response. Then came a whisper. Not from above, from below. "Not dead." I stumbled backward, falling into a puddle. My flashlight rolled away, flickering as the batteries threatened to die. I scrambled for it, heart slamming against my ribs like it wanted to escape. I cast the light back toward the grave. Nothing moved. The grave marker stood as still as ever. But the dirt in front of it was disturbed, as if something had pushed from beneath. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I returned with someone who might believe me. Tommy Rhodes was my best friend and the only person in town with a morbid curiosity that matched mine. We used to break into the old library just to read the restricted town history books. Most of them were just dusty birth records and land sales, but a few mentioned disappearances, shadows, things buried deep. I told him everything. About Mr. Flanders, the knocking, the whisper. At first he thought I was pulling some twisted prank, but when I showed him the fresh churn in the soil, where grass should have been untouched for decades, he paled. "You sure it wasn't some animal?" he asked, voice tight. "Animals don't knock like that, and they don't whisper." We stood in silence, staring at the grave. The headstone was cracked now, just a hairline fracture running straight through Eleanor's name. "She's been dead for over 70 years, Tommy said. "How the hell?" Before he could finish, we heard it again. 3 knocks, pause, 2 more. Tommy jumped. "Nope, no. This is how horror movies start." But I was already dropping to my knees beside the grave. "It's her. She's alive." "That's impossible. Graves don't knock, Grace." "Then explain it." He didn't. He couldn't. We returned that night. We brought shovels. I wish we hadn't. It took nearly an hour to reach the coffin. The soil was damp and heavy, and every thud of the shovel felt like a heartbeat echoing through the earth. My arms ached. My skin was clammy. But we didn't stop. Finally, the metal glint of the coffin lid came into view. Tommy hesitated. "What if it's not her? What if it is?" We pried the lid open slowly, expecting rot bones, maybe nothing at all. But what we saw froze us solid. She was there. Not a corpse, not a skeleton. A woman, old, yes, but breathing. Her chest rose and fell shallow but steady. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, fingernails cracked, eyelids fluttering, and around her neck the faded piano scarf. Tommy gagged, "Jesus Christ, this can't be real. She's alive." My voice cracked. "She's been alive all this time." We called 911. The operator didn't believe us, said it was probably a misunderstanding, but they sent an ambulance anyway. By the time paramedics arrived, she was unconscious again. The town exploded with rumors. The paper ran the headline, "Woman buried in 1953 found alive in own grave." Some blamed a hoax. Others said it was a medical miracle. Maybe she'd been in some deep coma, frozen in time, perfectly preserved. Doctors had no explanation. Her heart rate was low but stable. She hadn't aged a day since the 50s. No signs of decay, no signs of life either, until now. The hospital placed her in isolation, no visitors. Tommy and I knew better. This wasn't medical, this was something else. I went back to the cemetery alone this time. The disturbed grave was now cordoned off. Yellow police tape fluttered in the wind, but another grave just 2 plots over caught my eye. Fresh dirt, no name on the stone, just a single crack running down the middle. I felt my stomach drop. Then came the sound. 3 knocks, pause, 2 more. Not again. I stepped back, heart pounding. And then I heard a voice. Not a whisper, not Eleanor. A man's voice, deep, angry. She wasn't supposed to leave. They kept Eleanor at St. Agnes Recovery Center under tight watch. News crews swarmed the gates, but no one was allowed in. No one except family, of which there were none. That's what they thought. I did some digging in the archives, literally. We broke into the Grayson family crypt at the edge of town. The coffins were still there, mother, father, baby brother. But one was missing. "Tommy," I whispered, shining my light across the plaque. There was another sibling. He squinted. "Franklin Grayson, died in 1949. But his body's not here." We shared a glance. I didn't need to say it. What if he was the voice in the grave? What if he'd been buried too, but not alone? Back at the hospital, something was happening. Nurses reported Eleanor waking up in the night, muttering in a language no one recognized. Her hands moved in patterns almost like she was playing an invisible piano. The machines monitoring her vitals would spike whenever she reached the final note. One nurse was found unconscious, bruises around her neck. No signs of forced entry. Tommy and I snuck in disguised as volunteers. We made it to Eleanor's room. She looked peaceful, serene, like a porcelain doll. But her eyes opened the moment I whispered her name. "Grace." I froze. "How do you know my name?" She smiled, teeth too white. "You brought me back, just like he said you would." "Who?" Her smile faded, the one in the grave beside mine. Tommy stepped forward. "Franklin." She flinched. "Don't say his name." "Because he's listening." The lights flickered. Monitors beeped in strange rhythms, 3 short, 2 long. The same knock pattern. Eleanor sat up, eyes wide, voice clear and cold. "He's coming. And this time, he won't stay buried." Whispers from beneath the dirt. The first night after Eleanor Grayson woke, I didn't sleep. Neither did Tommy. The knocking didn't stop. Not just in the cemetery anymore now. It came from under the floorboards of my room, from the walls behind the shelves in Tommy's basement, from the old well near Main Street that no one had touched in years. Always the same pattern. 3 knocks, pause, 2 more. It was as if something had followed us back. As if opening Eleanor's grave had opened something else. Something older. Something angry. The whispers started the next day. Not loud, not even clear. Just murmurs in the back of your skull when you were alone. When everything was silent and still, they crept in like smoke. And they always said the same thing. She wasn't meant to wake. Tommy tried to rationalize it. Sleep deprivation, shared trauma guilt. Maybe even a mass hallucination. But deep down, he knew, like I did, that this was real. Something unnatural had awakened with Eleanor. We needed answers. We started with the Grayson family. Eleanor's parents had died in a house fire in 1955, 2 years after her supposed burial. No foul play reported, just a tragic accident. But their house had been located just a block away from the old church that burned down the same year the one that housed the town's oldest crypt records. The timing was too close to ignore. So we went to see Father Morrow, the oldest clergyman in Ember Hollow. He wasn't in good shape, early dementia, according to his nurse, but his mind was sharper than people gave him credit for, especially when I mentioned Eleanor. She was never buried, he said without prompting. Not properly. What do you mean? I asked. His eyes foggy but suddenly alert fixed on mine. They couldn't bury her on consecrated ground. Not after what she did. Tommy leaned forward. What did she do? Father Morrow's hand trembled as he reached for a small wooden cross on his desk. She made a pact. Not with God. The room chilled instantly. She wanted her sight back, he whispered. But she didn't know the price. We left shaken. A pact with what? That night I dream of Eleanor not as the fragile woman in the hospital bed, but younger. Her eyes, milky white hands, outstretched toward a piano surrounded by candles and symbols I couldn't recognize. And behind her in the shadows, a tall figure, faceless, watching. When I woke, my pillow was soaked with sweat, and on my window, drawn into the condensation from inside the room, were 5 faint finger marks. Not mine. At school, things got worse. Teachers reported hearing voices in empty classrooms. A janitor quit after claiming he saw someone crawling up from the drain in the girls' locker room, someone with skin like wet paper. And always the same knocking. 3, pause, 2. Eleanor remained unconscious, drifting in and out of waking sleep. Nurses said her hands moved constantly, like she was playing the piano, even in her dreams. No one could explain how she was still alive. Her vitals were stable, but she wouldn't speak again. Until I played her a song. It was Tommy's idea. He remembered her favorite piece, Claire de Lune. I found a recording and played it through a speaker by her bed. Her hand stopped moving. Her eyes opened. And she whispered, "He's listening." Who? I asked. Franklin. But she shook her head. Not Franklin, she said. Franklin was the first, but not the last. I leaned in. The first what? She looked straight at me, and for a moment her eyes were clear. The first to bury themselves. The first to wake. Tommy and I dug into town archives that night using the old records hidden beneath the library, the ones the council didn't digitize. We discovered a pattern stretching back over a century. Roughly every 25 years, someone in Ember Hollow was reported missing, presumed dead, and then came back. Not many, just 1 or 2 each time, never the same family. They always returned changed, quiet, pale, and they never stayed long. One entry chilled me to my core. 1918, Samuel E. Cartwright, buried during the Spanish flu. Grave reopened 3 weeks later, body gone. Neighbor claimed to hear moaning beneath the soil. Another, 1947, Franklin Grayson. Declared dead from drowning, body found buried behind the Grayson property. No water in lungs. It didn't stop there. Most recent, 1999, Martha Quinn, missing hiker, found sitting atop her own empty grave, humming a lullaby no one recognized. We were dealing with something much older than Eleanor, much older than Ember Hollow, something beneath the dirt, something that whispers. By the end of the week, Tommy's little sister Claire went missing. The police found her bike near the cemetery. They said it was probably a runaway case, but I knew better. She'd told Tommy 2 nights before that she'd heard tapping on her bedroom floor, that someone whispered her name from the closet. Tommy was a wreck. We searched for 2 days before we returned to Eleanor's grave. The police had resealed it with concrete, but nearby, 3 plots down, we saw something that made our blood run cold. A child-sized mound, freshly turned dirt. Tommy dropped to his knees and began digging with his bare hands. I joined him. 10 minutes later, we hit wood. He pulled the lid off, trembling. Claire lay inside, eyes closed, hands folded, breathing. She's alive, he sobbed. Just like Eleanor. We called it in anonymously. Didn't want to explain why two teens were digging up graves. Claire was hospitalized, same symptoms. Unconscious, low vitals, no signs of harm. But the whispers grew louder. Now they came even during the day, in voices we recognized. My mother's, Tommy's voice, even Claire's. But the worst came on a Sunday morning. I was walking past the cemetery on my way to the diner when I saw movement near the far end by the Grayson plot. A figure? Not Eleanor, not Tommy. Franklin. I recognized him from the town photo archives. Same angular face, same jawline, but too young, too preserved. He turned to me, eyes like coal. Thank you for opening the door, he said. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. He walked past me, his shoes silent on the gravel. But as he passed, I heard it again behind me under the ground. Knocking. 3, pause, 2, then dozens more. Tommy and I met that night and laid everything out. This wasn't just about Eleanor, or Franklin, or even Claire. Something ancient had been buried beneath Ember Hollow, feeding on grief, on tragedy, on forgotten graves and sealed secrets. Each time we unburied the past, it stirred. And now it was awake. What do we do? He asked. I didn't have an answer. But that night, Eleanor's hospital bed was found empty. And the piano in the old Grayson home, the one that had been untouched for 70 years, it started playing by itself. Sarah, to be continued. Let me know when you're ready for part 3, Midnight Echoes in the Cemetery. Just reply continue and I'll begin writing the next 1,500 words. You're very welcome. Here is part 3, Midnight Echoes in the Cemetery, continuing the story seamlessly written in English clean copyright for YouTube and exactly 1,500 words as requested. Midnight Echoes in the Cemetery. The piano played for 6 minutes. No one was inside the Grayson home when it began, not even the squatters who used to sneak in through the broken cellar. The house had been boarded up since the 1970s. Electricity had long been cut. No one had tuned that piano since Eleanor's parents died. And yet, the melody was flawless. A low, crawling nocturne, slow and haunting. The kind of tune that lingered in your bones. Tommy and I stood in the street outside the house, frozen. Every note seemed to pull the shadows closer. The longer it went on, the darker the neighborhood grew. Even the moonlight dimmed, swallowed by something not quite fog. We didn't speak until the last note echoed into silence. Then Tommy muttered, "We need to burn that piano." But the next day the piano was gone. We broke into the house just after sunrise. I'd memorized the layout from old photos. The parlor just inside the foyer had been Eleanor's favorite room. It should have been the centerpiece, a large black grand piano in the corner, near the tall stained glass windows. But now there was only an empty space, dustless and clean, as if something had been carefully removed just hours ago. Tommy ran his fingers over the floor. No dust, no scratch marks. It didn't get dragged out, I said. It got up and walked. He shot me a glare, but deep down he believed it too. We both did. On the mantel above the empty space, we found a single item, Eleanor's scarf. The same one she'd been buried with. The same one she was wearing when we found her alive. But it was clean now, pressed, folded neatly. And beneath it, scratched into the wood of the mantel, were 5 words. He plays through her now. We didn't go back to school that week. Not after 3 students fainted during choir rehearsal, each reporting the same thing. I heard a song in my head. A song I didn't know, but I was singing it. All 3 students had one more thing in common. They lived on the same street as the cemetery. Meanwhile, the town's mayor quietly ordered the Grayson graveyard to be sealed. He claimed it was out of safety concerns due to recent vandalism, but we knew the truth. Too many people had started hearing the knocking. Tommy's dad heard it behind the kitchen wall. An old woman reported tapping on her bedroom window on the 3rd floor. One of the police officers who found Claire had a breakdown in public screaming about voices calling from beneath his car. The town was unraveling, and so were we. We met at midnight again, cemetery gate, same place we'd opened Eleanor's grave. We didn't speak for a long time, just listened. Nothing but silence. Until, knock, 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 pause, knock, knock. But this time it didn't come from below. It came from above. We turned together. There perched atop Eleanor's gravestone was the piano. Not just any piano, the exact one from her house. Scratches in the same places, the left pedal still broken, somehow transported from the sealed home to here, without a single soul seeing it. How I breathed. Then it played, all by itself. The keys moved in slow, careful rhythm. The song it played was beautiful, sad, like a lullaby for the dead. But as it played, something darker stirred beneath the melody, like hidden notes only your subconscious could hear. I felt cold, like something ancient was being sung into the soil. Tommy grabbed my arm. We have to end this. We don't even know what this is. Yes, we do. He turned to me, eyes glassy. It's not about Eleanor. It never was. She was just the first to open the door. Then who is it about? He pointed to a grave behind the piano, one neither of us had noticed before. No headstone, no markings. Just a single rose, fresh red and glistening with dew despite the dry night. We moved closer. As we did, the piano stopped. The air changed, thicker, like walking through syrup. Then the ground beneath that unmarked grave shifted. Back up, I whispered. Too late. A hand burst from the soil, pale, fingernails blackened. The skin split in places like wet paper, and it was reaching not up, but out like it was feeling for something. The rose fell over, and a voice impossibly low spoke from beneath the earth. Play it again. We ran. Back to my house, locked the doors, turned on every light. But there was no safety anymore. The piano song played on every speaker in town that night. Radios, cell phones, Bluetooth earbuds, even an old cassette tape player at the local hardware store. No signal, no power source, just the same melody over and over. People started dreaming in music, waking with dried blood behind their ears, nosebleeds, bruises shaped like piano keys across their ribs. Something was playing us. The next morning I received a letter. No stamp, no return address. Slipped under my bedroom door. Inside was a single line typed in red. She was the first note. You are the last. I called Tommy. He'd gotten one too. We decided to go back to Eleanor. If she was still human, still herself, she might know how to stop this. But when we arrived at the hospital, her room was empty again. Not just empty, erased. Her name removed from the registry. No staff remembered her. The bed was stripped. Even the scent of her was gone. It was as if she'd never been there. Until we checked the hospital morgue. One drawer had been locked. The tag read Jane Doe, no heartbeat, but body still warm. We opened it. It was Eleanor, but her eyes were open, and she was smiling. She sat up slowly, arms moving, as if conducting a silent orchestra. Did you hear it? She asked. I couldn't speak. The piano never stopped, not really. It plays beneath the town, beneath your thoughts. It always has. You just weren't listening. Tommy stepped back. What are you? Eleanor tilted her head. I was the key. Now I'm just the echo. What do you want? I asked. She touched the scarf around her neck. He wants to play one final song. Through me. Through you. She looked at Tommy. You're the melody, but she's the rhythm. And then she whispered something that haunts me still. You've been buried this whole time. You just didn't know it. We left without speaking. Outside the hospital, a crowd had gathered, silent, eyes empty. Every one of them had blood trickling from their ears. They were humming the same song. That night, we returned to the cemetery one last time. This time, the piano wasn't alone. All across the graveyard, figures were standing beside headstones. Men, women, children, dressed in burial clothes, pale and broken. They weren't alive, but they weren't dead. They were the players. Eleanor sat at the piano, waiting. She looked up as we approached, eyes glowing faintly blue. "Midnight is the crescendo," she said. "You have until the final note." Then she began to play. When we dug up the grave, when we dug up the grave, we thought we were doing the right thing. We thought we were stopping it. That was our mistake. Eleanor had told us midnight is the crescendo. The final note of the song would complete whatever had begun the night she woke up, and we weren't about to let that happen. So we made a choice. We returned to the cemetery 1 hour before midnight. The air was colder than it should have been for early autumn, and the fog rolled in low, hugging the tombstones like a living thing. In the distance, we could already hear it. The piano. That same melody, slow, steady, inescapable. Each note settled into your bones and whispered that nothing would ever be the same again. Tommy carried the shovel. I brought the crowbar and a flashlight. We didn't speak much. We both knew what needed to be done. We were going to dig up the unmarked grave, the one near Eleanor's, the one with the single fresh rose. We knew he was in there. The conductor. That's what I had started calling him in my head. Not Franklin. Not a ghost. Something older. Something that had waited for this moment, waited for someone foolish enough to listen to, open to believe. And we had done all of it. Now we were going to undo it. The grave was undisturbed, at least on the surface. No dirt shifted, no markings. Just that rose again, still fresh, even though no one had touched it in days. The stem glistened with dew like the ground itself had been watering it. We moved fast. Tommy's hands were bleeding by the time we reached the coffin, but he didn't stop. I helped pry the last layers of wet earth away, and when the edge of the casket showed through, I froze. It wasn't wood. It was bone. The coffin was made of rib cages, interlocked human rib bones spiraling like the keys of a piano in white and red. Flesh still clung in places, and they moved subtly like they were breathing. Tommy recoiled. No way I'm opening that. But we had to. If we didn't, the song would finish. And whatever came next wouldn't just take over the town, it would spread. Like a plague of music, of madness, of resonance. I wedged the crowbar into the joint between the ribs, and with a grunt I pried it open. The bones creaked, screamed. Then the lid snapped. Inside was a man, or what used to be one. Dressed in a black suit, ancient but untouched by time. Face pale, stretched too tight, eyes closed. No signs of decay. Around his head was a crown made of piano wire slicing into his scalp. And resting across his chest was a conductor's baton. He wasn't breathing. But I knew he wasn't dead. I didn't know what I expected to find, maybe bones, maybe darkness. But not this, not him. Tommy leaned in. What now? Do we burn him? I didn't answer, because the conductor's eyes snapped open. They were completely white, not glowing, not blind, just blank. He didn't move, but the earth around the grave began to thrum. Not shake thrum, like a drum beat synced to a silent metronome. My heartbeat shifted to match it. So did Tommy's. And then the baton floated. It rose off his chest like it was lifted by invisible fingers and began to move slowly once, twice in the air. Conducting nothing. Conducting everything. All across the graveyard, the piano started playing again this time. Louder, stronger, faster. Keys smashed like thunder, and with each note more graves cracked open. The buried were rising. We had started something we couldn't stop. Run, I screamed. We bolted. Behind us, I heard the sound of fingers tapping wood from within coffins. Soil erupting. Voices singing low melodies in languages never meant for living ears. We didn't look back. We made it to the cemetery gates as the fog thickened behind us, turning black. A chorus began to echo, every voice in perfect harmony. And through it all, the melody kept building. Faster, louder. The crescendo was coming. Back at Tommy's house, we barricaded the doors and windows. His parents were gone, vanished during the second piano broadcast 2 nights ago. We hadn't seen them since. We pulled out the maps of the cemetery, the town records, every piece of folklore we'd uncovered. There had to be a way to stop it. That's when Tommy found it. Buried in the oldest town registry was a single line handwritten in faded ink. If the conductor opens the final measure, the living will no longer lead. Below that, scratched like an afterthought. The key is in the silence. What silence? I asked. Tommy looked up. We've been trying to stop the song, but what if we're supposed to end it? It clicked. The melody had never been meant to finish. That was the trap. Every grave it passed over, every ear it entered, every dream it infected. It was building energy, feeding on sound, rhythm, attention. But what if silence, not fire, not exorcism, was the answer? What if we could drown it out? We needed something strong, something that could mute the entire cemetery long enough to interrupt the conductor's finale. Tommy thought of the maintenance tunnels beneath the cemetery, old sewer lines unused since the 1960s. They ran under the graves. If we could get beneath him, beneath the stage, and detonate something loud enough to rupture the ground and shock the silence, and maybe it would stop the performance. Maybe. We didn't have explosives, but we had something close. Propane tanks from the old maintenance shed, 2 of them, taped together, a homemade blast. It was reckless. It was dangerous. But so was letting the world become a symphony of the dead. We returned at 11:42 p.m. The cemetery looked different now. Bigger, wrong. Tombstones were taller. Some floated. Others bent like tuning forks with every piano note. The air smelled of wax and mildew and roses. And all around us the dead stood silent, watching, swaying gently like audience members in a trance. Eleanor was at the piano, and behind her, floating above the conductor's grave, was hymn arms, outstretched baton, moving like lightning, summoning more voices with every flick of his wrist. Tommy and I slipped into the shadows and found the old stone hatch leading into the tunnels. It hadn't been opened in decades, but the rusted lock gave way after 2 hits with the crowbar. We dropped down into darkness. The tunnels smelled like rot and iron and something old enough to predate fear. We crawled under the graves, moving fast, using the thrum above as our guide. Then we stopped. Directly beneath the conductor, I planted the tanks, set the timer for 15 minutes. We climbed halfway back up, just enough to escape the blast radius. At 11:59 p.m., the music reached its peak. The conductor spun midair. The piano caught fire. The dead raised their arms. And then, in one, boom! The sound was instant and absolute. The earth above cracked open like glass. Stones shattered. Fire burst from the cracks. The piano exploded into splinters. But the silence afterward was even louder. No music. No whispers, no knocking, just stillness. We stood there covered in ash, watching as the conductor's bones disintegrated into dust. The dead collapsed where they stood crumbling like burned paper. The fog lifted. And Eleanor, she was gone. It's been 3 days. The town is quiet. No one speaks of what happened. Most don't remember. But sometimes late at night, I hear a soft sound in the wind. 3 knocks, pause, 2 more. And in my dreams, a voice whispers, "You ended the song." But silence has a rhythm too. Something was scratching from inside. I thought it was over. After the explosion under the cemetery, after the silence swallowed the song, Ember Hollow had gone quiet. No more piano playing from nowhere. No more whispers. No more graves knocking from the inside out. Tommy and I stopped talking about it. We didn't dare say we'd won, we just tried to move on. But the thing about burying something evil, you never really know if it's dead, and you don't always bury it deep enough. The first sign came 5 days later. Tommy called me in the middle of the night, his voice shaking. "There's something in my walls." I sat up wide awake. What kind of something? Scratching. That word scratching hit me harder than I expected. Not knocking, not whispering, but scratching, desperate, hungry. I thought it was rats, he said, but it's too slow, too deliberate. I didn't ask him why he hadn't slept. I didn't ask why his voice sounded like he was already breaking. I just grabbed my flashlight and went to his house. His room was dark except for a single desk lamp. Shadows stretched across the ceiling like veins. His wall just beside his bed was covered in scratch marks. Thin, sharp, all angled inward. From the inside. What the hell is that? I whispered. It started last night, he said. At first it was just a sound. Then this. He pointed to a long red line across his wrist. I touched the wall. It bit me. I didn't want to believe it. But when I moved closer, I could hear it too. Faint, ragged. Skrug, skrug, skrug. Like fingernails on drywall, slow and steady. It wasn't random. It had rhythm. And beneath it, a whisper, so soft I nearly missed it. Let me out. We spent the night in my room, lights on, music playing. I didn't want silence anymore. Silence had teeth. But in the morning when we returned to Tommy's house, the wall was different. The scratches were gone. But in their place was writing etched into the plaster like it had been carved by bone. You buried me, but I found another way. We didn't go to the police. What would we even say? Instead, we returned to the cemetery, or what was left of it. The explosion had sealed most of the old plots. The grounds were fenced off, now a warning sign bolted to the front gate. No trespassing, unsafe conditions. But we climbed over anyway. The grave that had once held the conductor was now just a crater cracked and blackened. The piano was gone. The graves were still. But something wasn't right. Tommy pointed. There! Near the edge of the grounds was a fresh grave. No marker, no name. Just soft turned dirt, still damp. We didn't dig this time. We didn't have to, because something was already digging out. That night the scratching spread. Tommy heard it in the walls. I heard it under my bed. Others in town, those who had been at the cemetery the night of the explosion, started reporting the same thing. Sounds behind mirrors. Cabinets opening on their own. Dreams of suffocation. A voice humming a melody they couldn't remember when they woke. It was like the song had ended, but the echo remained. And it was getting louder. We went to the library archives again. Searched every old newspaper, every police report. Buried deep in a forgotten journal from 1902, we found a phrase scribbled in the margins. The dead may sleep, but the buried listen. The journal belonged to someone named May Dunwell, a midwife who lived near the cemetery during the early plague years. She delivered babies during epidemics, buried many of them too. But near the end of the journal, her entries change. They speak to me now, the ones in the ground. They say they are not gone, only misplaced, only misheard. And one final entry dated November 13th, 1902. He is scratching again. He wants out. I fear if I sleep, I will wake beneath him. Tommy whispered. She heard it too, over a century ago. And she knew something we didn't. That's when we realized what the scratching really meant. It wasn't trying to get out. It was trying to get in. We each started noticing things. Tommy couldn't keep his eyes open past midnight. Not because he was tired, but because when he closed them, he saw faces behind his eyelids. Not dreams, faces, pressed against his mind like fog glass. I started hearing things in my own voice. At first just an echo when I spoke, then whole sentences I didn't remember saying. Once I turned on my phone and found a recording just 5 seconds long. It was me, but the voice was wrong, and all it said was, "You left the gate open." I didn't tell anyone, not even Tommy, until one night I woke up in the hallway of my house. I'd been sleepwalking. The front door was wide open. My bare feet were covered in dirt, and my hands, they were scratched. We knew the conductor was gone, his grave destroyed, his piano shattered, but we also knew what we felt now wasn't him. It was something else. The one he answered to. He hadn't created the melody. He was just the first to hear it. Now we'd heard it too, and it didn't need a song anymore. It just needed a body. Tommy went missing the next day. His mom called me frantic. She said he hadn't come home from school, but he hadn't been at school at all. I found his notebook on his desk. The last page had 3 lines. It's not a song anymore, it's a door, and it's already open. I spent the whole night searching. I went back to the cemetery. The grave was still there, still fresh, but the dirt, it was undisturbed again. No sign of digging, no footprints. Just one thing, a scratch right across the center of the grave. A long, deep gouge in the dirt like someone dragging a fingernail across soft clay. I dropped to my knees, put my ear to the ground. Nothing. And then, skirk, just once, followed by 3 words that chilled me deeper than any knock ever could. He's inside now. I haven't slept since. I see Tommy in the corners of rooms just out of sight. I hear the scratching beneath my bed, not trying to get out, just reminding me. It's still there. It's inside. And it's waiting for the next one to listen. She wasn't supposed to be alive. The first time I saw her again, I thought it was a hallucination. I hadn't slept in nearly 3 days. Tommy was still missing. The scratching in the walls had spread to the floorboards of my room, and every time I blinked, I saw shapes behind my eyes, figures standing in doorways reflected in windows that shouldn't show anything but sky. But there she was, Eleanor Grayson, standing outside my house at 2:13 a.m., barefoot in the cold, her pale hospital gown billowing around her like fog. Her hair was longer now, tangled, and wild eyes glowing faintly under the porch light like moonstone. She didn't move, just stared. And then she spoke. "You buried the wrong one." I didn't open the door. Instead, I did something I didn't think I was capable of anymore. I screamed. It startled her. She blinked slowly like she'd forgotten what screaming was, then stepped back into the shadows of my yard. By the time I grabbed a flashlight and ran outside, she was gone. But something was left behind. A single page torn from a notebook pinned to the porch railing with a nail. I pulled it free with shaking hands. Just one sentence scrawled in uneven handwriting. "I was never supposed to come back. He tricked us all." The next morning, I returned to the hospital where Eleanor had first awakened weeks ago. Officially, she no longer existed. No records, no name. No staff remembered her. Even the security cameras had gaps, blank spots where her bed used to be, corrupted files where her chart once was. But I found someone who remembered. Nurse Daniels. He was the one who'd cared for her the night she woke. "I knew she wasn't right," he said, voice low. "People don't come back from complete organ failure." But she did. And she wasn't grateful. She was listening, always listening, listening to what I asked. He looked at me with hollow eyes. The silence. Back in town, people were changing. Not dramatically, not all at once, but subtly. Neighbors I'd known for years now walked a little too quietly. Some of them never blinked. Some answered questions before I asked them. One woman at the post office started humming the old piano melody while sorting packages, even though she didn't realize she was doing it. I stopped her mid-hum. "Do you know that song?" She frowned. "What song?" When I played it back on my phone, the recording was silent. No hum, no voice, just background noise. I played it 3 times before realizing it wasn't recording her at all. Later that day, a note was left in my mailbox. No envelope, just folded paper with dirt smudged along the edges. Some doors open both ways. Hers never should have opened at all. I recognized the handwriting. It was Tommy's, which meant he was still alive. Or someone wanted me to believe he was. I followed the only lead I had, Eleanor. If she'd come back once, she could do it again. I just had to find where she went after that night on my porch. I checked the old Grayson house. Still boarded up, though. Now strange symbols were scratched into the wood. Not paint etched like claw marks forming unfamiliar shapes. circles within circles, sharp lines intersecting in unnatural geometry. And across the front door burned into the wood. She is not hers anymore. The next time I saw Eleanor, she found me. I'd fallen asleep at the library, surrounded by old death records and missing persons files. I woke to cold breath on the back of my neck. She stood there barefoot again, her hands hanging loose at her sides. But something was different this time. Her skin wasn't pale, it was gray, cracked around the joints like porcelain. Her mouth hung open slightly, and when she moved, her joints creaked like aged hinges. She knelt beside me and whispered, "He didn't need me to live, just to open the door." I stared at her, unsure if she was real. "Where's Tommy?" "He's close," she said, "but he's deeper than before." Deeper. She reached up and touched my forehead with one cold fingertip. "In the buried places, where the song was first heard." Eleanor led me to the edge of town, to an overgrown field I barely remembered from childhood. Behind it, obscured by trees, was the ruin of a stone chapel, one that burned down in 1955, the same year Eleanor's parents died. She stopped before the steps. "He built the first key here, not a song, a rhythm, a ritual." "Who did?" She looked up, and for the first time I saw real fear in her expression. "The one who doesn't knock, the one who scratches." Then she turned and her face shifted just for a moment. Not warped, not monstrous, but different, like a mask had slipped. And beneath it, something old and watching was staring out. She whispered, almost pleading, "Don't go below." And then she collapsed. I didn't have time to think. I ran up the chapel steps and into the ruins. The floor had collapsed in the center, revealing a spiral staircase carved into the earth, slick with moss and something darker. I followed it down using my phone light. The air grew colder, with each step heavy and wet, like breathing through cloth. At the bottom, a stone chamber. And there in the center was Tommy, tied to a wooden chair, eyes open, silent. At first, I thought he was dead. But then he blinked, and I heard the scratching again. Not on the walls, not from above, from inside him. "Tommy," I whispered, kneeling. He didn't respond, just stared. But behind him, carved into the wall in blood, were three words. "She was chosen." I touched his arm, and instantly the world shifted. Not visually, not audibly, rhythmically. The chamber pulsed with a silent beat. Not music, something older than sound. Like a heartbeat in the soil. A song written before humans knew how to sing. And Tommy spoke. His voice was layered, not his own. She wasn't supposed to be alive. She was meant to remain a vessel, not a witness. "Who are you?" I demanded. Tommy smiled, but it wasn't him anymore. She returned. "And now you've come too. All of you come eventually." I backed away, but the chamber pulsed again, and I understood. Eleanor wasn't brought back to live. She was reanimated just enough to open the way. I'd never saved her. I'd helped complete the ritual. I cut Tommy loose and dragged him up the stairs. The chapel trembled behind us. As we escaped into the night, I looked back once. A figure stood at the bottom of the stairwell. Not Eleanor, not the conductor, but the thing they'd made space for. A long-limbed silhouette of bone and black, its fingers tipped with nails like piano wire. And in its chest was a face Eleanor's, eyes closed, mouth sewn shut. She'd never truly come back. Because she wasn't supposed to be alive. The coffin was empty almost. I didn't want to open another grave. Not after what happened with Eleanor. Not after Tommy came back with someone else's voice buried beneath his own. But something about the new reports, the scratching, the unmarked graves reappearing across town, the children waking with soil in their mouths, made it impossible to ignore. So here we were again, shovels in hand, standing under a flickering street lamp near the west fence of Ember Hollow Cemetery. It was almost midnight, and something in the earth was breathing. It started 2 days earlier. A woman named Judith Linwood called the local police to report that her daughter had disappeared from bed, vanished with no sign of struggle, her window locked from the inside, sheets undisturbed. but they found muddy footprints on the carpet. Tiny, the size of a child's. Except they didn't lead out of the room. They led into it, from nowhere. That same night, someone unearthed a coffin in Plot 61C, registered to a Margaret Hensley buried in 1933. The lid was cracked open when the groundskeeper found it. At first he thought it was grave robbing, but when they looked inside, the coffin was empty. Almost. Because something had been left. A small wooden music box sitting perfectly centered. Still playing. Same piano melody we thought we'd silenced weeks ago. Tommy and I visited the site just after sunset. Plot 61C looked like any other grave, aside from the faint claw marks around the edge of the lid. The groundskeeper led us through the police tape after I lied and said we were helping with paranormal research. He didn't even flinch. This town's got things under it, he muttered, eyes darting around the trees. We just pretend not to hear them. I asked where the music box was now. He pointed to the chapel. They put it in the crypt, locked tight. We didn't tell him that locks don't mean much to the things buried here. The Ember Hollow Chapel had been condemned for 50 years. After the fire in 1955, no one rebuilt it. But its basement, the crypt, was still used occasionally to hold family remains when plots were being relocated. It was cold inside. Dust clung to the air like memory. The stone walls whispered with age. Tommy held the flashlight steady as I descended the last steps. The music box sat in the center of the room on a stone pedestal, still playing, soft, delicate, notes drifting like fog. I reached out, but Tommy stopped me. Don't touch it. Why? Because that melody's not just music. I stared at him. Tommy's eyes weren't his anymore. He'd been acting different since I pulled him from the chapel ruins. More distant, always listening to something I couldn't hear. Sometimes I'd catch him tapping his fingers rhythmically against the table, or mouthing words silently, or standing completely still for long periods like he was waiting for a cue. The voice inside him hadn't left. Not entirely, but he fought it. I saw it in his jaw, the tension, the struggle, and right now he was winning. I stepped back. We left the box untouched. For now. That night I dug into the old Hensley family history. Margaret Hensley died in 1933, 8 years old. Cause of death, pneumonia. Buried with her favorite toy, a handmade wooden music box from her grandfather, a former music teacher. Except the box wasn't buried with her. It was found in the coffin instead of her, which meant either she was never buried at all, or someone took her out and left the melody behind. I couldn't sleep. Around 3 or 1 a.m. I heard the music again. Not through speakers, not even in my head. It came from under my bed. 3 notes. Pause. 3 more. I got up slowly, pulled the mattress back, lifted the wooden plank beneath it. And there it was. Not the music box. Not a ghost. A handprint. Small, dirt-caked. Fingers spread wide like someone had pushed up from inside the floor. And beside it, scratched into the wood. The box was her coffin. I called Tommy, told him we had to go back. We missed something, I said. The grave was empty because she wasn't inside. He didn't ask who. He just said, meet me at the chapel, bring salt. The graveyard was quiet when I arrived. Too quiet. Even the crickets had stopped. Tommy stood at the crypt door holding a crowbar. I locked it earlier, he said. I came back. It was already open. We stepped inside. The music box was gone, but something else sat on the pedestal now. A child's dress. Torn. Matted with dirt. And beside it, muddy footprints, leading up the wall and into the ceiling. I looked at Tommy. He didn't look back. His eyes were fixed on the floor now. I followed his gaze. More footprints, leading down into a section of the crypt wall where several stone panels had been removed. A tunnel had been carved by hand. Claw marks, scratches, barefoot impressions in the dirt. A child had walked here a long time ago. We followed the tunnel for nearly 10 minutes. It twisted through the earth like a wormhole connecting the crypt to something older, something deeper. The air smelled like mildew and ash. At the end of the tunnel, a wooden door. Carved into it was a symbol I'd seen before on Eleanor's grave. A piano key split down the center. I pushed the door open, and there in a small underground chamber was the coffin. Margaret's, still cracked open, empty, almost, because lying inside was a second music box. This one wasn't playing. It was ticking, like a timer, and etched into the inside of the lid. When the second box opens, the rest will rise. I turned to Tommy. His face had gone pale. He whispered, "We didn't stop the song." I swallowed hard. We just slowed it down. The ticking grew louder, and from somewhere behind us in the tunnel, we heard footsteps. Light, soft, barefoot. Then a voice no louder than breath. "You shouldn't have opened the first one." We ran, back through the tunnel, through the chapel, into the cold night. We didn't stop until we reached the fence behind the cemetery. We didn't speak for hours, because we knew what was coming. Margaret Hensley wasn't alone. There were other boxes, other children, other graves that weren't quite empty. The melody wasn't just a song, it was a trigger, and we'd set the first one off. Later that night, as I sat in my room trying not to blink, I felt something under my pillow. I pulled it out. It was dirt, and a small note written in a child's hand. I was lonely in there. Now I'm not. I turned the note over. A second line. We buried the melody, but the harmony is still playing. The coffin was empty. Almost. Now it waits for someone else to lie down and start the next verse. There's still dirt under my nails. I've scrubbed my hands raw. Bleach, scouring pads. Hot water so intense it left my skin peeling. But the dirt won't come out. It's under my nails. Not just soil grave dirt. Dry black packed into the beds of my fingers like it's part of me now. The strange thing is I don't remember digging. But I woke up with blood on my shirt, mud in my mouth, and that horrible heaviness in my lungs. Like I'd been underground all night. Like I'd come up from somewhere I was never meant to leave. Tommy hasn't spoken in 2 days. Since we found the second music box beneath the chapel, something's been off. He sits with his back against the wall, eyes closed, lips moving like he's silently counting down to something. I tried shaking him once. He just whispered, "Don't interrupt the measure. He's almost finished." I asked who. He didn't answer. The third box surfaced yesterday. A maintenance worker at the north side of the cemetery was repairing a collapsed tombstone when he heard music. Not playing, humming, coming from underground. He dug into the soft earth, barehanded, desperate to make it stop, and found a rusted tin box. Inside a lock of hair, a child's drawing, and a fragment of sheet music. Same melody. Always the same. 3 measures, 11 notes, then silence. But this time when the music stopped, something answered. The worker collapsed. By the time they found him, his ears were bleeding, and his mouth was filled with rose petals. Tommy came out of the trance last night. Just for a minute. Just long enough to say they're not coffins. They're invitations. I pressed him for more, but he started humming again. Quiet, just under his breath. I recognized the tune. It was the song from the box, but played in reverse. I started digging again. Not graves, records. Old town ledgers, medical files, missing persons reports dating back to the 1800s. I found something I wish I hadn't. There's a pattern, one that repeats every 37 years. Children go missing. 3 graves get disturbed. And in each case, there's a single survivor, someone who digs something up, someone who hears the melody. This time, it was me. They called it the awakened cycle in the earliest notes, a phrase scratched into the margins of an old priest's journal dated 1860. They sleep until the song calls them back, until a body listens, until dirt finds a new mouth. I didn't want to believe it. But then I found a photo, grainy, faded. 3 children standing at the edge of a grave, one of them holding a shovel. The girl in the middle was wearing Eleanor Grayson's scarf. Tommy's breathing changed this morning. He started inhaling in short bursts like someone trying to match a rhythm. Then he opened his mouth and spoke in a voice that wasn't his. It was deeper, slower, like something speaking through wet leaves. Three keys open the song. Three vessels carry the breath. The fourth lies beneath. I tried asking what that meant. Tommy's eyes rolled back. He whispered, "You've already touched it," then went still again. The dirt under my nails is darker today, thicker. No matter how I scrub, it stays. And now I'm starting to remember. Flashes, the grave, the third box. My hands digging fast like I was afraid of being caught. Nails ripping, breath shallow, and a voice just behind my ear whispering, "You know where the fourth is." I haven't told anyone yet, but I think I do. There's a trail behind the Grayson estate, long overgrown, half buried under vines and dead leaves. Locals call it Whisperer's Path. The story goes, if you walk it in complete silence, you'll hear your name carried in the wind. No one walks it anymore. But I did. Just before sunset, each step felt wrong, like I was walking backward through time. The birds didn't sing. The trees leaned away from the trail as if trying not to touch it. And at the very end, I found a clearing. One stone, no name, half buried in the earth. Beside it, a box, half open. The fourth. It wasn't playing music. It was breathing. Tiny, slow exhales like something sleeping inside. I didn't open it, but I know it's meant for me. The dirt under my nails is no accident. It's a mark, an inheritance. Something has chosen me to carry the next verse. That night I dreamed of the conductor again. But this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood dozens, hundreds of pale figures in burial clothing, each one missing their mouths, sealed shut with wire, but their chests were open. And from inside I saw the music boxes, beating like hearts. I woke up gasping. My fingers were clenched tight. When I pried them open, there were petals in my palm, black rose petals, wet with soil. Tommy spoke again this morning. He looked at me, really looked, and said, "You can stop it, but you have to bury yourself." I didn't understand. He clarified. The fourth box needs a rhythm, a heartbeat. If you lie down inside it, it ends. I asked him what happens to me if I do. He said nothing. He didn't have to. I'm at the clearing now. It's nearly midnight. The box is still there, open, waiting. I'm holding this notebook in one hand, writing these last words by flashlight. There's no music anymore. Just breath. In, out, like it's syncing with my own. I hear footsteps behind me, dozens of them, but I don't turn around. I already know who they belong to, the forgotten, the awakened, those who answered the melody before me. The cycle has always needed a fourth, a final verse, a coda. I'm stepping into the box now. The dirt is warm. I don't know why. Maybe it's always been waiting for this moment. Maybe I have. If someone finds this notebook, know this. The melody wasn't the curse. It was the summoning. The real curse is remembering. Knowing you were part of something older than time, something buried, forgotten, and now awakened. What we unleashed should have stayed dead. The box is still breathing. That's the first thing I notice when I wake up. Not wake from sleep. I haven't really slept in days. This is more like coming out of something deeper, a trance, a memory that wasn't mine, a silence too heavy to hold. I'm lying in a shallow grave, not fully buried, just nestled. Like someone had placed me there gently, as if tucking in a child for a long nap. The fourth box rests beside me, open, empty, except for the faint pulsing breath that rises from inside it, matching the rhythm of my own. Something was here with me, or inside me, and now it's not. I stumble back toward town, light-headed fingernails packed with more dirt than before, throat dry, like I've been inhaling soil. I don't remember lying down in the box, but I remember what I saw. a sea of graves unfolding in all directions beneath Ember Hollow. Each one not sealed, not at rest, waiting, some with boxes, some without. All of them humming that same cursed melody under their breath, so faint it vibrated through the marrow of my bones. And in the center of them, all one grave that was not a grave at all. A door, still closed. For now, Tommy is gone when I get back. Not missing, not vanished, just erased. His clothes are still on the floor of the safe house, his notebook, his drawings. But his presence, Darila Chasam, gone, like he was never here. Like he fulfilled his part and was absorbed into whatever mechanism we've awakened. I flip through his notebook again. The last page is different now. It used to say you can stop it, but you have to bury yourself. Now it simply reads, it's not a melody anymore, it's a mouth. The town feels changed too, quieter than it should be, hollow in a way that has nothing to do with sound. Windows dark, dogs no longer barking, no laughter, no traffic. Just the occasional gust of wind that sounds too much like whispering. I try speaking to people. Some look through me like they don't recognize me. Others smile too wide their mouths, not quite matching their eyes. And a few just hum. Always the same tune. Always out of sync, like they're not humming to express joy, but to remember who they are. On the edge of town where the old funeral home used to be, I see something new. A statue. It wasn't there yesterday. It stands about 10 feet tall, carved from black stone that gleams like wet obsidian. A faceless figure, thin, arms extended like a conductor about to summon a symphony. At its feet, children carved in agony, their hands pressed against their ears. No plaque, no dedication, but etched across the base in uneven lettering. We heard, we open, we obey. I try to leave Ember Hollow that afternoon. Just drive until I hit another town, maybe find someone who hasn't been touched by this. But every road out is blocked. Not by police, not by construction. Just rerouted. No matter which direction I take, every turn loops me back to the center of town. Back to the cemetery. Back to the door. It's like the town itself has become circular. Self-contained. A record stuck on a loop playing the same cursed measure over and over until someone changes the song or smashes the player. That night the voice returns. Not in dreams. Not in my head. Through the walls. Soft at first, like someone calling from the end of a long hallway. Then louder, closer. You opened it. Now sing it through. The drywall warps. Faint outlines of fingers press through the paint, reaching outward. I press my back to the door and hold my breath. The fingers recede, but the voice remains. What we unleashed should have stayed dead. I find the others the next day. Or rather, they find me. 5 people gathered in the basement of the old town hall, each of them survivors of a previous cycle, each marked in some way. One woman is missing her shadow. One man only speaks in questions. One child draws maps of places that don't exist until they do. They know about the boxes, the melody, the burial, and the truth we never wanted to face. The melody was a lock. The boxes were keys. And we've opened something far worse than death. There's no reversing it now, the woman says. Her name is Mira. Her voice is made of paper and smoke. The 4th verse has already begun. We're in the bridge now. The what I ask. The bridge says the question man. The part of the song that connects what you were to what you'll become. I look at the child who draws a single image. A person standing at the foot of an open grave, arms outstretched. Inside the grave, there's something rising. No face, no features, just teeth. The town continues to spiral. Each night, another statue appears. Each day, more people forget who they were. Children draw music notes on their walls in red ink or something close to it. The mayor's last public broadcast was just static and piano music. And in the woods near the oldest graves, people begin gathering at dusk. They don't speak. They hum. And when the sun dips below the horizon, they dig. Not out of fear, But worship. I decide to go back to the chapel one final time. I have to see it. The door. The one grave that was never a grave. Mira warns me not to. She says it will know me now. That I've touched all four boxes. That I carry the breath of the conductor in my lungs and the dust of the forgotten under my nails. But I go anyway. The ground around the chapel is cracked, like something massive has breathed through the earth from below. The door to the basement has collapsed, revealing a slope of blackened stone. I follow it down. No flashlight needed. There's a glow now. Pale, sickly. A phosphorescence that clings to the walls like veins. The chamber is wider than before. Vast. And in its center the door. 10 feet tall, ribcage shaped, laced with piano wire. Throbbing like it has a pulse. It doesn't open outward. It opens inward. Because what lies behind it was never meant to leave. But we've loosened the lock. The first box opened the ears. The second opened the mouths. The third opened the rhythm. And the fourth opened the invitation. Now the door waits for one more thing. A name. A sacrifice. A conductor. I hear footsteps behind me. Turn. Tommy. He's not Tommy anymore. His eyes glow with the light of the chamber. His voice carries multiple tones when he speaks. I told you we could end it. He walks to the door, places one hand on the rib cage. It groans beneath his touch. He looks back at me just for a second. And in that moment I see Tommy again. Scared. Trapped. But still there. He mouths two words. Stop me. I run. I don't think. I don't plan. I just run forward, knock him aside, and slam my hand against the door. For a moment I feel everything. Centuries of humming in the dirt. The broken songs. The echo of each child buried alive. I feel the full measure. And I understand. What we unleashed isn't one thing. It's everything that death ever tried to contain. All the grief, all the silence, all the forgotten screams. We opened it. We made space for it. We gave it breath again. And now it's awake. The door begins to open. She came back and she remembers us. When the door opened, it didn't swing wide or crash apart. It breathed. Inhaled so deeply the entire chamber seemed to collapse inward, like the grave beneath Ember Hollow was drawing a final breath before waking fully. Then it exhaled, and the world changed. The light went out. The humming stopped, and I heard her voice. You left me down there. I didn't move. Couldn't. The chamber felt smaller now, though nothing had shifted. The stone walls still arched overhead, and the pale phosphorescent glow still clung to the door's edges. But the space had taken on a density I can't explain, like standing inside a heartbeat frozen mid-throb. Tommy, no, the thing that had once been Tommy was gone, vanished when the door opened, or maybe absorbed, and now I was alone. Except I wasn't. Because she had returned. Her voice came again soft and clear as wind through dry leaves. You buried me too shallow. I heard you laugh. I heard you forget me. A shape began to take form just beyond the doorframe. Thin, pale, hair like river weeds soaked and limp. A dress torn at the shoulder, trailing dirt that drifted upward instead of falling. She stepped into the chamber without a sound. No footsteps, no breath, just presence. And eyes. Wide, white, unblinking. Eleanor. But not the Eleanor we tried to save. Not the Eleanor who came back to warn us. This version didn't stumble or shake. She walked with certainty. Because now she remembered. I took a step back. Eleanor. Her head tilted. Is that what I was? She asked. A name, a face you pitied. I swallowed hard. We didn't know. We thought we were helping. You were, she said. But not me. I looked into her eyes and saw it not hatred. Not even pain. Just memory. All of it. Every second underground. Every note of that cursed melody. Every time we spoke her name like it was still ours to speak. I wanted to rest, she said, but he made me sing. She turned her head toward the open door behind her. From within, shapes stirred. Not walking, not crawling, floating, like threads of smoke taking human form, each one wrapped in burial clothes, eyes sealed, mouths open wide, humming that same awful tune, but in reverse. They were never dead, Eleanor said, only paused, like a breath held before a scream. One of the figures drifted closer. It was a boy no older than 10. His face was smudged with soot, his hands raw. In one fist, he held a broken music box. He didn't speak. He just stared. And then, he smiled. I backed up against the wall, heart pounding, every nerve screaming to run. But Eleanor raised her hand. The boy stopped. She looked at me, and for just a moment, I saw the girl we once tried to save. The real Eleanor. Tired, terrified, trapped in something far beyond human understanding. I remember you, she said. My voice cracked. Then you know we didn't mean to. You meant to help, she finished. You meant to fix what never should have been touched. Then she stepped forward. You opened the boxes, you let him in. You started the fifth verse. My blood went cold. The fifth verse. You and one. She nodded once. The coda. Behind her, the figures began to hum louder. Not music. Words. Garbled, backward, echoed. Like a prayer chanted in the wrong direction. I didn't understand the language, but I understood the feeling. Endings. Not of the world, but of stories. Of lives. Of names. They weren't ghosts. They were unfinished pages. Chapters torn from their own timelines. Children who never got to finish their stories. Now, through the open door, they were rewriting themselves. One name at a time. And Eleanor remembered every single one. I need you to close the door, I said. Her smile was sad. You can't. Why? Because you never closed it in the first place. What does that mean? She reached into her dress, pulled out something small. A photograph. Faded, torn at the edges. It was me. Tommy, Eleanor, standing at the edge of the first grave. Only this version was older, darker, like it had been taken decades ago. She flipped it over. One line scrawled in pencil. The song ends where it began. I remembered something then. A moment from years ago, maybe childhood, maybe a dream. Standing in the cemetery alone, hearing a faint melody from beneath the dirt. Not scared, fascinated. I was the first one to hum it, before the grave knocked, before Eleanor died, before Tommy was taken. I started the song. Not recently, not this year. I always have. Why me, I asked. Eleanor stepped forward. You were the empty verse, she said. The pause between notes, the silence that gave the melody space to breathe. I don't want this. No one ever does. She looked back at the drifting forms behind her. They want to rest, she whispered. They've always wanted to rest. She reached out and touched my chest. The breath left my lungs. And into the silence came the song. I was there again, in the first grave, in the dirt, beneath the conductor's hands, hearing the music box play just above me, hearing Eleanor scream, hearing Tommy dig. But this time, I wasn't a victim. I was conducting, hands moving through the soil, fingers tracing notes into the earth. Every knock, every whisper. Mine. Not possessed, not cursed, chosen. I woke in the chamber. Eleanor was gone. The door was closed. The others, the floating forms, had vanished. But in the dirt beneath my feet, dozens of small boxes had appeared. Each one marked with a different name, a different date, some future, some past, and at the center of them, all mine. I didn't open it. I didn't need to, because the memory was enough. She came back. She remembered us. But more than that, she forgave us, in her own way, by taking the song with her, by closing the loop, by finishing the story we should have left alone. I walked out of the chapel. The sky was light for the first time in weeks. The statues were gone. The humming was silent. The dirt under my nails was clean. And Ember Hollow was still, for now. But I know the truth. We never destroyed the melody. We only paused it, and somewhere out there, a child hums, a grave knocks, and a new name begins to forget what it means to be whole. Because the song always comes back, even if the voices don't. But when she comes back again, she will remember us, all of us. And next time, she won't be alone.